I wanted to ruin my best friend's wedding. I told her in the middle of the ceremony in front of everyone that I am pregnant with her fiancés. She just told him, after the ceremony we'll talk. But they did kick me out of the wedding. I don't want my son to grow up without a dad. I have always been the one who brings the life to the party. The person everyone looks at when they want something exciting to happen. Chloe, my so-called best friend, has always been the opposite, a beige wall of a person who somehow managed to snag Jason, a man who actually has a pulse. We've been friends since college, and I've spent years trying to polish her personality, but she's just so fundamentally basic that it's almost offensive. When she announced her engagement to Jason, I felt a genuine pang of pity for him because I knew he was just settling for a life of spreadsheets and Sunday brunches. Jason and I always had this unspoken spark, a shared understanding that we were both a little too vibrant for the world Chloe wanted to build around us. It was only natural that we eventually found ourselves in a situation where that spark turned into something more tangible, something that Chloe was too blind to notice. The relationship between Chloe and Jason was always so performative, full of matching sweaters and curated Instagram posts that made me want to gag. I stayed close to them, acting as the supportive maid of honor because I knew that Jason needed an escape from the suffocating boredom of their life together. We had our moments, little glimpses of what could have been if he hadn't been tied down by his sense of duty to a woman who doesn't even know his favorite late-night snack. I was the one he could truly talk to, the one who understood his ambitions and his frustrations, while Chloe just nodded and smiled like a Stepford wife. It wasn't my fault that she was so disconnected from her own relationship that she couldn't see what was happening right under her nose. I was just providing him with the emotional and physical stimulation he was clearly lacking in his sterile domestic bubble. As the wedding grew closer, I felt a growing sense of responsibility to intervene before Jason made the biggest mistake of his entire life. I had just discovered that I was carrying his child, a beautiful, unexpected gift that served as the ultimate proof of our connection. It felt like a sign from the universe that I couldn't just sit back and let him marry a woman who would never be able to give him the kind of passion we shared. I kept the news to myself for a few weeks, savoring the secret and imagining the look of relief on Jason's face when he realized he didn't have to go through with the wedding. I deserved to be the one standing at the altar with him, not some girl who thinks a wild night is staying up past 10 to watch a documentary. The baby was the catalyst I needed to finally take action and claim the life that was rightfully mine. The day of the ceremony arrived, and the air was thick with the scent of overpriced lilies and the fake smiles of guests who were only there for the free champagne. I looked stunning in my bridesmaid dress, though I felt a bit restricted by the fabric that was clearly designed to make everyone look as plain as the bride. Chloe was in the dressing room, vibrating with that annoying, nervous energy, and I just kept thinking about how much better I would look in white. I could have told her then, in private, but where is the impact in that? She would have just cried and tried to hush it up, and Jason wouldn't have been forced to make a public choice. I needed the world to see that our bond was stronger than a piece of paper and a religious ceremony performed in a drafty old cathedral. I sat in the front row, my heart dancing a little jig of excitement as the music started and the doors swung open for Chloe's grand entrance. She walked down the aisle looking like a giant marshmallow, and I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing at the sheer absurdity of it all. Jason was standing at the front, looking stiff and uncomfortable, probably wishing he was anywhere else but there. I waded through the hymns and the readings, my hand resting gently on my stomach, feeling the weight of the truth I was about to unleash. I wasn't being cruel. I was being a savior, a truth-teller in a room full of people committed to a lie. Every second that passed was a second closer to Jason's liberation from a life of mediocrity. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, the part where the priest asks if anyone has a reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony. The silence in the room was heavy, almost expectant, as if the walls themselves were waiting for me to speak up. I didn't hesitate. I stood up with a grace that I'm sure looked cinematic to everyone watching from the pews. "I object!" I screamed, my voice echoing off the high stone arches and cutting through the silence like a diamond through glass. I saw the heads turn, the collective gasp of the crowd, and for a second I was the only person in the world who mattered. I didn't just say it. I made sure everyone felt the weight of my words as I pointed to my belly. I looked Chloe dead in the eye, waiting for her to crumble, waiting for the bouquet to hit the floor and the tears to start flowing. "Jason, you can't do this!" I shouted, making sure my voice reached the very back of the cathedral so there would be no doubt about what was happening. "I'm pregnant with your baby, and you know we belong together." I expected chaos. I expected Jason to run to me, and I expected the ceremony to end right then and there in a flurry of drama. Instead, the room went eerily quiet, and Chloe didn't even blink. She just stood there like she was watching a mildly interesting weather report. It was so incredibly disrespectful of her to ignore the gravity of the situation I was presenting. Chloe slowly turned her head toward Jason, her expression calm and unreadable, which was honestly just a testament to how cold-hearted she really is. She leaned in and whispered something to him, but she made sure it was loud enough for the priest to hear. "After the ceremony, we'll talk." I couldn't believe my ears. She was actually planning to continue with the wedding after I had just dropped a bombshell like that. It was the ultimate insult to me and to the child I was carrying, a blatant disregard for the truth. Jason didn't say a word. He just looked down at his shoes like a coward, and I realized then that he was probably just too shocked to react properly. Before I could even process her reaction, I felt hands on my arms, firm and unyielding, as two security guards appeared out of nowhere. I tried to shake them off, screaming about my rights and the baby's right to have a father, but they didn't care about the emotional stakes. They began dragging me down the aisle, my heels catching on the white carpet and crushing the expensive rose petals that Chloe had wasted so much money on. The guests were whispering and pointing, and I felt a surge of indignation that they were looking at me like I was the villain. I was the victim here, the one being silenced and removed from a situation where I was the only one being honest. The guards didn't stop until we reached the heavy oak doors, and then they practically tossed me out onto the stone steps like I was some kind of common crasher. I heard the doors thud shut behind me, the sound final and echoing, leaving me alone in the cold afternoon air. Stood there for a moment, smoothing my dress and trying to regain my dignity, while the muffled sound of organ music started up again inside. They were actually continuing the ceremony as if nothing had happened, as if my entire life hadn't just been put on display. How dare they treat a pregnant woman with such utter contempt and exclusion? I'm standing in the parking lot now, the gravel crunching under my feet as I pace back and forth, my phone clutched in my hand. I can hear the distant cheers from inside, the sound of people celebrating a union that is built on a foundation of deceit and denial. My heart is racing, not because I'm wrong, but because I'm so incredibly angry at the injustice of it all. I did this for my baby so he wouldn't have to grow up wondering why his father chose a boring woman over his own flesh and blood. Jason needs to be a father, not a husband to someone who clearly doesn't value the truth. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says, "Seriously, Samantha, you waited until the actual altar to pull this stunt? If you were really her best friend, you would have handled this weeks ago in private. This wasn't about the baby, it was about the spotlight." Ops reply, I was trying to save Chloe from making a massive legal and spiritual mistake. If I told her in private, she would have just manipulated Jason into staying. The public setting was the only way to ensure the truth couldn't be swept under the rug. Anonymous user 2 says, "I'm calling BS. Does Jason even know you're pregnant? Or was this a fun little surprise for him to hear in front of his entire family? You sound like you're living in a soap opera." Ops replied, Jason is clearly in denial because of the pressure Chloe puts on him to be perfect. He needed a public wake-up call to finally accept his responsibilities as a father. I'm the only one brave enough to hold him accountable. Update 1. It's been 1 hour since my last update, and the sheer disrespect of this entire situation is starting to settle in my bones like a chill. I am currently sitting on the curb outside the chapel, my expensive dress getting ruined by the dirt because no one even had the decency to offer me a chair. The doors to the cathedral are still shut tight, acting as a physical barrier between me and the man who is supposed to be supporting me right now. I tried to find a way back in, thinking I could slip through the side entrance where the choir usually enters, but the cowards actually locked it. I can hear muffled cheering and clapping coming from inside, which is just disgusting considering the emotional trauma I'm currently enduring. They actually finished the ceremony, which is a level of cold-blooded behavior I didn't think even Chloe was capable of. My heart is absolutely racing because this was not how the script was supposed to go in my head. Jason was supposed to realize his mistake, stop the wedding, and run after me to apologize for ever doubting our connection. Instead, I'm out here by myself with mascara smearing down my face because the wind is a bit nippy and my eyes are sensitive. I look like a wreck, and it's all because they chose to prioritize their little party over the well-being of a pregnant woman. I've been texting Jason every 30 seconds, pouring my heart out and explaining exactly how much he is hurting our future. I told him that the baby is kicking from the trauma of being rejected at the altar, hoping it would spark some sort of paternal instinct in him. I know it's a bit early for that, but I can feel my own pulse through my stomach, and I'm sure the baby can sense my distress. It's a scientific fact that babies feel what their mothers feel, so Jason is essentially abusing his own child by ignoring me. He hasn't opened a single one of my messages, even though I can see his phone is active on social media. The silence from his end is deafening, and it's making me realize just how much Chloe has poisoned his mind against me. She's probably sitting in there right now, smugly holding his hand and telling him that I'm just having a moment. It's so manipulative how she plays the victim while I'm the one literally sitting in the gutter. I tried to call his best man Mark, but he blocked my number the second I hit dial, which is just typical of the toxic loyalty in that group. They're all circling the wagons around the bride, ignoring the fact that a new life is at stake here. I've started pacing the perimeter of the building, looking for any gap in the defenses, but they've basically turned the church into a fortress. Every time a guest comes out for a smoke, they look at me with this mix of pity and horror, as if I'm the one who did something wrong. I overheard a group of Chloe's cousins laughing about the interruption, and it took everything in me not to go over there and set them straight. They have no idea what it's like to carry the weight of a secret like this, only to have it treated like a joke. The lack of empathy in this world is truly staggering, especially from people who claim to be Christians. I decided to try the front doors one more time, banging on the wood until my knuckles were sore, but no one came to answer. It's incredibly illegal to lock someone out of a public space like this, and I'm seriously considering calling the police to report a safety violation. What if I had a medical emergency right now? I'm under a lot of stress, and the baby needs me to be calm, which is impossible when I'm being treated like a pariah. I can hear the organ music winding down, which means they're probably heading out to the limo soon for the reception. I sat back down on the curb, trying to breathe through the indignation and the cold. My phone is almost dead because I've been sending so many high-priority messages, and I don't have a charger in this stupid clutch bag. I'm thinking about the way Jason looked at the altar. That fleeting moment of eye contact we had before the guards grabbed me. He looked terrified, and I know it's because he realizes his life with Chloe is a lie, but he's too weak to break free. I'm the only strength he has, and he's letting her keep us apart like some kind of jealous jailer. It's just so unfair that Chloe gets the white dress, the party, and the husband while I get the curb and a dying phone battery. I've been her best friend for years. I've listened to her whine about her boring problems, and this is how she repays me? By stealing the father of my child and having me physically removed from her presence? The audacity is just beyond comprehension, and I hope she realizes that this marriage is already cursed by her own selfishness. I'm not going to just disappear into the night. I have a responsibility to my son to fight for what he deserves. I can see the photographers coming out now, setting up for the grand exit photos, and it makes my blood boil. They're going to pretend everything is perfect, taking pictures of a sham while the real story is sitting right here on the sidewalk. I'm tempted to walk right into the background of every single shot just to make sure they can never look at their wedding album without seeing the truth. My mascara might be smeared, but my resolve is stronger than ever, and I'm not leaving until Jason looks me in the eye. The wind is picking up, and my bridesmaid dress is definitely not meant for outdoor vigilante work. I'm shivering, but I'm telling myself it's just the righteous fury of a mother protectively guarding her young. If Jason won't come to me, I'll find a way to get to him, because a baby needs his father, regardless of what some piece of paper says. I'm already planning my next move, and it involves a lot more than just sitting on a curb like a discarded decoration. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, the baby is kicking. Girl, if you just found out you're pregnant and it's early enough that Jason didn't know that baby is the size of a bean. You're having gas, not trauma kicks. Stop being so dramatic. Ops reply, it's called nervous spasms and maternal fetal bonding. I know my body better than some random internet stranger who probably doesn't even have kids. My baby is highly sensitive to the negative energy Chloe is emitting. Anonymous user 2 says they locked the doors because you're a literal biological hazard to their happiness. Why are you still there? Have some dignity and go home before the cops actually show up. Ops reply, I am the victim of exclusionary gatekeeping. It is my right to be near the father of my child, especially during a life-altering event like this. Dignity is making sure my son isn't abandoned by a man under Chloe's thumb. Update 2. It's been 3 hours since my last update, and the atmosphere in this parking lot has shifted from expectant to downright hostile. But guests are finally trickling out of the chapel now, looking all flushed and happy as they head toward the fleet of cars waiting to take them to the reception. I stood up as soon as the doors opened, trying to maintain a regal posture despite the fact that my dress is wrinkled and I'm definitely missing an earring. I tried to approach the bridal car, a sleek black limo that looked entirely too expensive for a couple as boring as them, but I didn't even get close. Chloe's brother, Pete, who has always been a meathead with a grudge against me, stood in my way like a human wall, his arms crossed and a sneer on his face. I saw Chloe and Jason walking out a few minutes later, and the sight of them made my stomach turn into knots. She looked radiant, which is honestly just disgusting and insensitive given that she's currently in the process of stealing a man's future. She was laughing, her hand tucked into Jason's arm as if they hadn't just been involved in a massive public scandal. I didn't let Pete's intimidation stop me. I leaned around his bulky frame and yelled at the top of my lungs, Jason, look at your son's mother! I wanted to make sure every single guest heard it, to remind them that the happily ever after they were witnessing was built on a pile of broken promises. Jason finally turned his head and looked at me, and for a second the world seemed to stop spinning. I expected to see fear in his eyes, or maybe a flicker of that old passion that we shared when things were simple. Instead, he looked sorry for me. It wasn't the look of a man who is guilty. It was the look you give a stray dog you see shivering in the rain, something between pity and mild annoyance. It was the most insulting expression I've ever received in my life, and it felt like a slap across the face. He didn't even try to come over. He just let Chloe pull him toward the limo as if I were some sort of minor inconvenience. Chloe didn't even give me the satisfaction of looking angry, which is just another one of her pathetic mind games. She kept that stupid, serene smile on her face, ignoring my presence entirely as she climbed into the back of the car. I was so overwhelmed by the unfairness of the situation that I reached up, grabbed my fascinator, which was already falling off anyway, and threw it with everything I had at the car window. It didn't do any damage, obviously, but it was a symbolic gesture of my refusal to be ignored. The limo drove off, kicking up a bit of dust that settled on my shoes, leaving me standing there while the rest of the guests whispered behind their hands. I'm not the kind of woman who just gives up and goes home to cry into a tub of ice cream. I have an invitation to the reception, a physical piece of cardstock that proves I was a welcomed guest before Chloe decided to turn everyone against me. They can't legally stop me from entering the venue that I was invited to, and I fully intend to use my status as a guest to get the FaceTime with Jason that I deserve. I'm currently in an Uber heading toward the country club where the reception is being held, and I'm spending the ride fixing my makeup. I might have been dragged out of the church, but I will walk into that reception with my head held high. The entitlement of these people is just breathtaking, acting like they can just edit me out of their lives whenever it's convenient. Jason needs to realize that being a father isn't something you can just opt out of because you're having a party. I'm doing this for the baby because a child needs to know that his mother fought for him from day one. If I have to make a scene at every single wedding event to get my point across, then that's exactly what I'll do. Chloe thinks she's won because she got the ring, but the truth is a lot harder to get rid of than a disgruntled bridesmaid. I'm thinking about the reception layout, trying to remember where the head table is usually placed in that ballroom. I'll wait for the toasts. That's always the best time to speak up because everyone is forced to listen. I have a lot more to say than just, I'm pregnant. And I want Jason to hear every single word about the responsibilities he's trying to dodge. I'm his son's mother, and that gives me a permanent pass to be wherever he is, regardless of whose name is on the marriage certificate. The laws of nature and biology trump the laws of some fancy country club every single time. The Uber driver keeps looking at me in the rear-view mirror, probably wondering why a woman in a crushed bridesmaid dress is crying and applying neon lipstick at the same time. I don't care what he thinks, he's just another person who doesn't understand the complexities of my life. People are so quick to judge the other woman without realizing that sometimes the other woman is the one who actually holds the truth. I am the hero of this story, the one trying to break through the facade of a perfect marriage to reveal the messy human reality underneath. When I get to the club, I'm going straight to the bar for a glass of water. Staying hydrated is important for the baby, and then I'm finding my way to the ballroom. I don't care if they have security there too. I'll find a way in through the kitchen or a side door if I have to. My presence is a reminder of the life Jason is trying to ignore, and I won't let him have a single moment of peace until he acknowledges us. It's not about being toxic. It's about being a mother who refuses to let her child be a secret. I can see the gates of the country club approaching, and my heart is pounding with a mix of adrenaline and righteous indignation. This is where the real work begins, where I prove that I'm not just a funny story from the ceremony. I am a force to be reckoned with, and Chloe is about to find out that a woman fighting for her child's father is the most dangerous person in the room. I'm stepping out of the car now, and I'm ready for whatever gatekeepers they try to throw my way. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says you're heading to the reception. Samantha, that's private property. They can absolutely stop you from entering, and at this point you're just trespassing. Do you want to spend the night of the wedding in a jail cell? Ops reply, my status as a mother gives me a permanent pass to Jason's location. He is the father of my child, and legal technicalities about private property don't apply when a child's future is at stake. They are the ones breaking the law of common decency. Anonymous user 2 says that pity look from Jason is the biggest red flag I've ever seen. If he's not scared or angry, it's because he knows something you don't. You should probably stop before you embarrass yourself further. Ops reply, he's just masking his true emotions for the cameras. Jason has always been good at hiding how he feels when he's under pressure. That pity was actually a silent plea for me to keep fighting for him. Update 3. It's been 5 hours since my last update, and the world has effectively collapsed in on itself in a way I never could have predicted. I didn't even make it into the reception ballroom. The security at the country club was prepared for me, likely tipped off by Chloe's paranoid brother. I was making a scene at the entrance, demanding to see my fiancé, because in my heart that's what Jason is. When the doors opened and Chloe came out alone. She didn't have her bridesmaids with her, and she wasn't carrying her bouquet. She just looked tired and strangely calm. I started my speech immediately, the one I'd been practicing in the Uber, about how Jason needs to provide for us and how she's essentially stealing a father's time for her own selfish vanity. I went on for at least 5 minutes, laying out all the ways she was failing as a friend and as a woman by keeping Jason from his real family. I expected her to scream back, to call me names, or to try and have me arrested right there on the marble floor of the lobby. Instead, she just stood there and let me talk, her arms crossed, watching me with that same infuriatingly serene expression. When I finally ran out of breath, she didn't look angry at all. She actually smiled. A real, soft, pitying smile that felt like a knife between my ribs. Samantha, she said, her voice quiet but carrying clearly across the lobby. I think you should listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. She proceeded to explain in front of the valet and the receptionist that Jason had a vasectomy 5 years ago after his first marriage ended. My heart didn't just drop. It felt like it turned into a block of ice and shattered in my chest. She told me that he's completely sterile and that they had actually been working with a donor for months because they're planning to start their own family next year. I stood there, my mouth hanging open, trying to find a way to make the math work in my head, but there was no way around it. If Jason is sterile, then the baby I'm carrying, the one I've been using as a shield and a sword for weeks, couldn't possibly be his. I tried to scramble for a justification, my brain firing off desperate excuses like a failing engine. I heard myself saying that the doctor must have messed up, or that this was some kind of miracle pregnancy that defied medical science. I even tried to suggest that Jason was lying to her about the vasectomy to keep her from getting suspicious of us. But Chloe just shook her head, looking at me like I was a delusional clown who had finally run out of jokes. The medical records are at the house, Sam, she said, her tone so clinical, it was nauseating. You really should have checked your facts before you tried to ruin my wedding day. The lobby felt like it was shrinking, and I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room burning into me. I looked around and saw a few guests who had come out to see what the noise was about, their faces twisted in expressions of mockery and disbelief. I had stood at the altar and claimed a man's paternity in front of his entire family, and now I was being told that it was biologically impossible. I felt like a fool, a complete and utter laughingstock. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have a witty comeback or a way to flip the narrative. I was just a girl in a dirty dress who had lied to herself so thoroughly that she'd forgotten what the truth even looked like. Chloe didn't even wait for me to respond after that. She just turned around and walked back into the reception, the heavy doors clicking shut behind her. I was left standing in the lobby, the silence echoing louder than any of my screams ever could. I felt the weight of my own actions crashing down on me. The realization that I had destroyed my reputation for a fantasy that didn't even have a foundation. I walked out of the country club, my legs feeling like lead, and I didn't even call an Uber this time. I just started walking down the long, dark driveway. The cold air hit me, but it didn't feel refreshing. It felt like a punishment for my own stupidity and arrogance. I kept thinking about the baby and the guy from the gym I'd been seeing on the side while I was obsessing over Jason. I had been so convinced that Jason was the father because I wanted it to be him, because I wanted the drama and the status that came with it. I had ignored the dates, ignored the reality of my own life, all so I could play the role of the tragic, rejected lover. Now, I'm just a woman who's pregnant and alone, with no one to blame but the reflection in the mirror. I sat down on a stone bench near the entrance gates, my head in my hands, feeling the dampness of the night air on my skin. I could hear the music from the reception in the distance, the muffled bass of a party that I was never truly a part of. They were in there celebrating their new life together, and I was out here in the dark, a discarded piece of their past. The humiliation is so thick I can almost taste it, like copper in my mouth, and I know that I can never show my face in that circle of friends again. I checked my phone and saw that I had dozens of notifications, mostly from people who had been at the wedding and were already gossiping about the miracle pregnancy. My social media was blowing up with comments from people I haven't talked to in years, all asking if I was okay or if I had finally lost my mind. I didn't reply to any of them. I just stared at the screen until the battery finally died, leaving me in total darkness. It felt appropriate, honestly, a perfect metaphor for the way I've handled my entire life up to this point. I'm sitting here now waiting for the world to stop spinning, but the ground feels as unstable as my own logic. I don't know where I'm going to go or how I'm going to explain this to the actual father of my child, assuming he even wants anything to do with me. Chloe won, not because she's better than me, but because she actually had the facts while I only had my own delusions. I tried to manufacture a miracle to get what I wanted, and all I ended up with was a front row seat to my own destruction. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, and there it is. The boomerang hits. So whose baby is it, Samantha? You just admitted to being a liar and a cheat in front of an entire country club. This is the most epic self-own in the history of Reddit. Ops reply, I might have been confused about the dates. Everything has been so stressful lately and I just wanted Jason to be the one. I'm not a liar. I'm just a woman who is overwhelmed by her own emotions and the possibility of a miracle. Anonymous user 2 says a miracle doesn't fix a 5-year-old vasectomy, honey. You look like a delusional clown because you are a delusional clown. Chloe played you perfectly by just letting you talk until you buried yourself. Ups reply, Chloe is probably manufacturing medical records just to win the argument. You don't know what kind of manipulative things she's capable of doing to keep Jason under her control. I still think there's a chance the doctors were wrong. Update 4. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and the fallout from that night has been absolute and unforgiving. The social circle I spent years cultivating has vanished as if it never existed, replaced by a wall of blocks and user not found messages. It turns out that Jason did sleep with me once, months ago, in a moment of weakness that I thought was the beginning of our life together. But he knew for a fact it couldn't be his child, not just because of the vasectomy, but because the timing was completely off. He didn't say a word at the wedding because he wanted me to bury myself in front of everyone. A silent trap that I walked into with my head held high and my mouth wide open. Chloe replaced me in the friend group within days, moving on as if I were nothing more than a minor glitch in her wedding planning. Everyone has blocked me, even the people I thought were my loyal allies, because no one wants to be associated with the crazy girl who tried to ruin a marriage. They are currently on their honeymoon in Bora Bora, and I made the mistake of checking Jason's public profile before he restricted it. He posted a photo of them laughing on a white sand beach with a caption that read, "Grateful for the truth that sets us free." It was a clear jab at me, A public celebration of my failure that hurt more than any of the things Chloe said to my face. I'm currently broke, having spent all my savings on that bridesmaid dress and the Uber rides that led to my own public execution. I'm alone in my apartment. The silence so heavy it feels like it's pressing the air out of my lungs. The actual guy I was seeing, a guy from the gym who is actually decent, found out about my stunt through the local gossip mill and won't return my calls. He was my safety net, the one person I could have turned to, and I threw him away for a fantasy that was never real. I tried to blow up Chloe's life so I could be the center of Jason's, and now I'm just a funny story they tell at dinner parties about the girl who lost it at the altar. I am the one who's going to have a baby without a dad, and the weight of that reality is finally starting to sink in. I chose the wrong stage for my performance, thinking that a grand gesture would fix a broken life, but all it did was ensure that I have no one left to lean on. I look at my stomach now and I don't feel the righteous fury of a mother. I just feel a deep, hollow regret that I can't shake. I'm not a hero or a savior. I'm just the person who tried to ruin a wedding and ended up ruining herself instead. It's a bitter, uncomfortable truth, and I'm forced to live with it every single day while they enjoy their happily ever after.